you have got to accept the court decisions even when you don't like them.
Lakini Maraga thinks he can overturn the will of the people. We shall show you that we shall revisit.
When that revisit remark was made, I invited the president and he was gracious. He came to the judiciary, we had a function.
The challenge we are facing in this country is unrestrained power by the executive.
It's a quote you've probably heard a time or two. Put another way by the 19th century English historian, liberty consists in the division of power, absolutism in the concentration of power. And it's for that very reason that thousands gathered here on the 27th of August 2010 to celebrate said liberty, the freedom to think freely, speak freely, and vote freely.
To His Excellency the President will now wave it to all of us as the fanfare is being played.
And it begins, Article 1, sovereignty of the people. All sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this constitution. You don't get to the president until chapter 9 on the executive. So you can see right there the tension between the culture of constitutionalism that birthed the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and the culture of constitutionalism that we were emerging out of.
Somebody said in jest that the Kenyan president had the powers of the Roman Catholic Pope and the Queen of England rolled into one. Of course, that was hyperbolic. But the point that was being made is that we wanted to reform that aspect. And we asked ourselves, what do? We create a president who is subject to checks and balances.
The challenge we are facing in this country is unrestrained power by the executive. That's the problem.
You see, when Kenya got her independence in 1963, it came with a starter kit for democracies, which included the expected three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Kenya may have been a sovereign nation, but for her people, it was not yet uhuru, hence a clamor for a second liberation. Shouts and marches calling for a new order, one where the system did not conspire against her citizenry. A problem the framers of our constitution sought to remedy by making the independence of these arms unassailable, entrenching their functions in a constitution that promised to be transformative. And for good measure, a fourth arm was added by way of independent commissions. A decade on, and the jury is still out on fidelity to this principle. A train of strained engagements would begin when in September of 2017, the judiciary, acting by authority of the Constitution, dealt the executive a huge blow in the wake of a hotly contested presidential vote.
A declaration is hereby issued that the presidential election held on 8th August 2017 was not conducted in accordance with the Constitution and the applicable law, rendering the declared results invalid, null, and void.
As a Supreme Court, they cannot overturn the will of the people. Lakini Maraga thinks he can overturn the will of the people. We shall show you. Irregardless, we respect, but we shall revisit. We shall respect, but we shall revisit this agenda. Oh, yes.
And in this way began a cold, of an emotion-laden relationship between the two arms.
The nullification of the election 2017, from where I sit, was a politically unwise decision, because then you're declaring war on a government. It is not a war you're going to be able to finish, because you're getting into a fight when the judiciary is still weak, when it's still wobbling along, and it can be decimated.
Even when that revisit remark was made, I invited the president and he was gracious. He came to the judiciary, we had a function, and he came to the judiciary. And in his address, he said, look, CJ, some of these remarks were made in the heat of the moment. Let's go on and work. You wear thick skin. Those were the president's words. I have no problem with the president. I have no problem with the president as a person. I have a problem with the exercise of the powers that are there.
Months into President Kenyatta's second term, and huge cracks began to emerge. The judiciary, among various state departments, hit with crippling budget cuts in 2019. The executive and the legislature argued that the austerity measures were not unique to the institution.
When President Kibaki came in, the budget for the judiciary was about 1.5 billion. In the first year of his term, he doubled it to 3 billion. In the last year of his term, it moved from 8 billion to 16 billion. So that's how the progression was. This year's budget is about 15 or 14 billion. So it's lower or at where it was 10 years ago. Now, during that period, I think the executive's budget has more than tripled or doubled. Parliament's budget has doubled. So the budget has grown from 1.something trillion to 3 trillion, while the judiciary's budget has remained stuck or a bit lower than that.
Lower and lower, the relations sank into perhaps the most protracted dispute yet. Acting under Article 172(1)(a), the Judicial Service Commission presented a list of 41 judges to the President for appointment and swearing in to various courts. But President Kenyatta would have none of it, his contestation the integrity of some of the appointees. Nearly a year later, and despite 2 court orders directing him to swear in the judges, the standoff persists.
His Excellency the President will not abdicate his role as head of state and government to appoint persons with a questionable record to serve the nation in the solemn role of judge.
The AGs has put that argument before the court, but it has been dismissed. As a country that is ruled by the rule of law, you have got to accept the court decisions even when you don't like them.
But the matter remains far from concluded. Constitutional lawyers are equally divided on the interpretation of the provisions of law.
The constitutional provisions on the appointment of judges were not very elegantly drafted. And therefore, the idea that an independent Judicial Service Commission would nominate judges and the President would automatically appoint them is an argument made by one group. Then there is another group that says, but how does that then make sense if you are the appointing authority and you have a list and you come across information or material information? How then would you do that? That would be a dereliction of the responsibility of maintaining fidelity to the rule of law.
The Honorable the Attorney General sits in this JSC and therefore is meant to advise His Excellency the President on matters relating to integrity. The security arms, the NSIS and others also respond to the President, so that if after the JSC has made a decision and the President through his intelligence is told that certain people's certain people have integrity issues. What he should do is to simply remand those names back to the JSC with the new information so that they can revisit the issue.
If we are to remain faithful to the Constitution, you swear them in, then probably commence a process of their removal.
Those integrity issues have never been revealed to me, even in confidence. Even in confidence. Eh?
We had that issue also in 2015. If you recall, the president, JSC appointed judges, and the president chose to swear some and not the other. And I remember as Judicial Service Commission, we sought audience with President Uhuru Kenyatta, and he raised the same issue. I don't want to be a rubber stamp. I have to participate in this. And we said, that's okay, Your Excellency. You know, the fact of the matter is legally you are, you know, a rubber stamp. But this is how you are not a rubber stamp. You have the AG and the chair of the Public Service Commission as your representatives in the Judicial Service Commission. You have two appointees, a man and a woman, who sit in the Judicial Service Commission.
At the height of the renewed war on graft were a series of dramatic arrests and prosecution of top government officials implicated in economic crimes. But the perceived war has been dogged by the characteristic blame game on lack of convictions. A large chunk of that blame has been heaped at the doorstep of the judiciary.
I think it is a shame on our country that we prosecuted a case against drug traffickers in our country and we couldn't get a prosecution. And within a year of them being arraigned in the United States, they have been jailed.
Some people have said that the judiciary is the weak link. Weak link in the justice chain. The judiciary doesn't go getting cases from out there to come and hear them. The cases are brought by the police and then they are prosecuted by the DPP. The judiciary will go by the evidence. That's what the rule of law is all about. If you bring a strong case, there will be a conviction. If you don't bring a strong case and the evidence is tampered with at the stage of investigation, the courts will throw away those cases.
Na anafunga project kwa sababu ya contractor ambaye failed to get a job. So project inasimama, and we know the professionals who do that business. Surely
you get government projects designed in such a way that they are meant to benefit some particular people. Then those challenges come to court because of the procurement processes followed. When we give orders, there is an uproar that we are stagnating government projects. We are not.
At the center of the escalating tensions between the executive and the judiciary is a question of constitutionalism and fidelity to law. As the tension persists, capacity challenges arise for the judicial arm, struggling with a huge backlog of cases. The former Chief Justice says constructive dialogue may be a way out.
When the government was unhappy about a particular thing, we say, yes, come to Judicial Training Institute, we talk. We talked a lot about decisions against government. We're trying to justify why they were made. We allowed government institutions like KRA to come and tell us how our decisions impact the national interest. And we were also able to talk to them about how the judiciary functions and so forth.
It's not just in the sphere of the judiciary that the executive arm has been accused of overreaching, but into the legislative sphere as well. Parliament, which as established under Article 93(1) of the Constitution, is meant to act as Big Brother, acting as watchdog over the executive. And yet the reality appears to be the opposite, the executive looking over the legislative arm's shoulder.
Can you distinguish the president, whether he is with the parliament, whether he is with his staff? He shouldn't be doing all this. They shouldn't be running around from one to the other. That's not his role.
You will find that what is at play in Parliament is somebody telling you this is the party position. You must follow the party position.
As a sign of strength, I forgive them without conditions.
As evidenced by the recent house cleaning carried out by the Jubilee Party leader Uhuru Kenyatta, in which those of a contrary opinion were stripped of their leadership positions.
I am hoping one day somebody will go to court, because some of those actions may be legitimate. And there's also the question whether the president, sitting as chair of a parliamentary group, and he cannot chair a parliamentary group, is not a member of parliament, whether he can fire committee members. We are distorting democracy. Yeah, we were in that parliament and we know that, yes, there was your party position, but a parliamentary group leadership is elected by the parliamentary group itself and fired by the parliamentary group itself. The party may communicate and members may act, but they must be left to do their thing.
When you decide who becomes the speaker, when you decide who becomes the majority leader, when you decide who sits in all those committees, and like happened recently, when you reshuffle according to the whims of the executive, Parliament in Kenya is finished.
Me, as a speaker, I came in on a Jubilee ticket. I mean, Jubilee is the one that nominated me. And the moment I became a speaker, I ceased to be a member of any political party because I must be neutral. Now I've told you, if Jubilee Party have written, they have sat and written and brought names to say, we have lost confidence. Did you listen to what the arguments were even when they were removing my deputy? Of course, they said, it's not that you are incompetent, you are very good, you have done very well. But again, the appointing authority has said he has lost confidence in you, and he has followed, he has brought the names and said, now do this. As a speaker, what do I do? That's where it puts me. I can only...
More recently, the revenue sharing formula has exposed the fragility of the newly formed alliances between the executive and those accused of being opposition turncoats. Senators are forced to choose between towing the party line and doing right, or at least appearing to do right by their constituents. 10 years in, has Parliament proven itself capable to check the excesses of the executive? The consensus appears to be no. The people's representatives appearing to be only too happy to play along until 3 senators were taken into police custody just before a crucial vote on the sharing out of revenue between counties.
Mimi siingi kama sijui jina lako. Nipatia ID yako. Wachukue kopi ya ID na ID ya polisi ambaye ana kampani. Shooters, go gari. Huyu ni nani asifungiwe?
To arrest 3 senators, to make it impossible for them to come and make their decision, to subvert Mr. Speaker, sovereign right of the people of Kenya under Article 1 of the Constitution. Senator Orengo told me on the floor of this house that revolution hits its own children.
We are unable to make decisions. Why? Because of all the interference that is around us.
If we continue this way, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are going to back. In fact, we are feeling with nostalgia for the Moi era.
Mr. Speaker, as they were enjoying, as they were making merry, as the deep state was celebrating, as the system was celebrating, suddenly, and I say suddenly, there is going to be a writing on the wall. Many, Tekel and Parisi.
Mr. Speaker, it is you
and I'm looking at you, it is you, Mr. Speaker, who has been defied. And Mr. Speaker, if you cannot sit on that seat, this will be a good time to resign. I can sit there. And for even a rumor, Mr. Speaker, that you're under pressure. I hear you're under pressure. Pressure from who? Did God call you? Did you speak to God this afternoon, Mr. Speaker? Who is pressurizing you?
It's good you said it's a rumor.
Yes.
Because I'm not under any pressure.
The contempt that they are treating us, the contempt they treat people who are elected, Mr. Speaker, tells you, Mr. Speaker, that this country is on the brink.
Of course, you know, I condemned it. I said it was wrong. It should not have happened that way, especially just when on the eve of a crucial vote, you know, then that creates a bit of suspicion.
And for that reason, Madam Chair, I oppose.
One thing that people must understand at all times is that the Speaker has no vote in the House. The Speaker generally guides debate and ensures observance of the rules of debate and adherence to the Constitution and the law. So if they make certain decisions which I don't approve of, I take the matter to the House.
Reserved for the first runners-up of a presidential vote, the minority party shadows the executive, ready to raise the red flag at the abuse of power. Yet a peace deal between the two leading contenders of the presidential vote in 2017 has upended the nature of Kenyan politics as we've known it.
Opposition politics in parliament is dead, you know, and yet this is a clear provision in our constitution that yes, you win the election, form government, but let's also have an opposition that can actually be an alternative government.
I don't agree that the opposition is weak. So people have not understood the system of government that we adopted now as compared to, you know, we had a parliamentary system before. Now we have got a presidential system. Presidential system, power is divided between executive, legislature, and judiciary. Now, the legislature oversights the executive as a whole. So there's nothing like opposition is weak here. Parliament is weak.
The role of ODM in Parliament is the minority party, and their members are still holding the minority party posts and collecting PACs for those posts, yet not delivering to Kenyans. If you're a government, form a coalition government so that the next minority party can be identified in Parliament. But now, ODM is having their cake and eating it. If you listen in Parliament, the people articulating government policy is the loudest are in ODM, not in Jubilee. And outside of Parliament, the retired Prime Minister or a former Prime Minister, because he's not retired, he's former Prime Minister, is the one who articulates government policy better than Uhuru.
The 2010 Constitution also created various independent commissions to safeguard the Bill of Rights. But are they now little more than an extension of the executive?
When you go to chapter 5 of the Constitution, where they create the Constitutional Commission, they ended up creating very many superfluous commissions, which really are rendered redundant even as we speak.
A commission is as independent as the persons in it. Recently, we have seen the president moving to appoint cronies in the commission, rewarding people who didn't make it in elections. That is one way of neutering the commissions and making sure they are not effective. why is Parliament approving those appointments? In fact, there are some commissioners, you notice, will be doing more political work for the government than the work of the commission from where they draw their salaries.
On reflection, could the problem lie in the 20% non-ideal that the Yes campaigners argued could be fixed at a later date?
PNU wanted the hybrid form of government, where you had the president elected, members of parliament forming government, but not a pure parliamentary setup. ODM wanted a pure parliamentary system where you had no elected president. The president essentially was the prime minister who was in the house. You are political parties. So to negotiate, we came for a pure presidential system.
We want an executive arm of government that is responsive to the constitution, that is subject to the law and to the people's representative in parliament. And we can have that either with a presidential system or with a parliamentary system. The systems are honest.
This tension not only exists between Parliament and the executive, but it has also manifested itself between Parliament and the judiciary.
The judiciary cannot stop a process in the legislature until it is completed, and if it's challenged, then they can then interpret it and take action. But they cannot stop our process. We can also not go to court to interfere with what they are doing.
There are some people, some politicians and there are some political elites who are living in the past. It's like we are still in the era of the imperial presidency. Where you give an order and it is followed.
Implementation of the Constitution, of course, is not instant coffee. Yeah? It's not, you know, there will be challenges here and there. You know, that's why we have the judiciary. They give us, they go and they tell us, no, what you did here was not right. But you know, remember, they can't make the law. They will interpret.
Independent or not independent? That is the question. Olive Burrows, NTV.